Chris Slade, a renowned British drummer, has had an illustrious career spanning several decades, collaborating with iconic bands and artists such as AC, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and The Firm. In the early 1980s, Slade had the opportunity to work with David Gilmour, the esteemed guitarist of Pink Floyd, during Gilmour's solo projects. This collaboration provided Slade with a unique perspective on the internal dynamics of Pink Floyd, particularly the tumultuous relationship between Gilmour and bassist Roger Waters. In candid interviews, Chris Slade has painted a troubling picture of Roger Waters' role within Pink Floyd. Slade describes Waters as a figure who went far beyond being a leader. He was a force that could dominate, manipulate, and even suffocate the creative spirit of those around him. Waters' need for control, as Slade observed, overshadowed the contributions of his bandmates, particularly David Gilmour. It was as if Waters couldn't see or refused to acknowledge the value that others brought to the band, leading to a deeply fractured working environment. Slade notes that Waters' belief in his own ideas bordered on arrogance, creating a toxic dynamic that left little room for the artistic input of others. Roger's ego filled the room. Slade remarked, adding that any suggestion or creative idea from Gilmour or other members would often be dismissed outright if it didn't align with Waters' vision. Waters' refusal to compromise, according to Slade, didn't just stifle creativity, it bred resentment that lingered long after their recording sessions had ended. Waters wasn't merely confident, he was convinced that his vision was the only one that mattered, a mindset that slowly eroded the collaborative spirit that once defined Pink Floyd. Slade was particularly critical of Waters' treatment of David Gilmour, whose talent and contributions were pivotal to Pink Floyd's success. He claims that Waters often undermined Gilmour, viewing him less as a partner and more as a subordinate. Slade believes that Waters' inability to see Gilmour as an equal was a major reason for the band's internal tension. Without Gilmour, Pink Floyd wouldn't have reached its legendary status, Slade asserted, hinting that Waters' arrogance blinded him to Gilmour's essential role. According to Slade, Waters seemed to see Gilmour's artistry as an inconvenience, something that distracted from what Waters believed Pink Floyd should be a reflection of himself. Roger Waters' domineering personality didn't just affect Gilmour, it had an alienating effect on nearly everyone in the band. Slade describes Waters as someone who actively fostered division, often pitting members against each other and creating a hostile atmosphere. This behavior, Slade suggests, was not just a byproduct of Waters' ambition but a deliberate tactic to maintain control. Roger thrived on creating a sense of isolation among us, Slade recalled, explaining that Waters' strategy seemed designed to keep everyone slightly on edge, unsure of where they stood. It was as if he wanted the band members to feel indebted to him, even as he disregarded their contributions. Roger Waters' treatment of his bandmates went far beyond creative disagreements. Chris Slade paints a portrait of a man whose disregard for others' contributions bordered on outright contempt. Waters didn't just lead the band, he ruled it with an iron fist, often belittling any idea that didn't align with his own. Slade remembers moments in the studio when David Gilmour, whose intuitive sense of melody had shaped the band's identity, would propose a softer, more melodic approach only for Waters to dismiss it with a scoff or an offhand comment. For Waters, anything that diverged from his dark, cerebral vision was irrelevant, and he made sure Gilmour and the others felt it. Slade recalls one incident vividly. During the recording of The Wall, Gilmour had suggested a particular guitar riff that he believed would add an emotional depth to one of the tracks. Waters listened briefly, then waved it off with a dismissive hand gesture, muttering, "We're not making pop songs here for Gilmour," whose contributions were already being overshadowed by Waters' growing influence. This casual dismissal felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't just a rejection of an idea, it was a clear reminder of Waters' belief that his vision was superior and that everyone else's ideas were secondary at best. But it wasn't only Gilmour who suffered under Waters' condescending attitude. Richard Wright, the band's keyboardist, faced even harsher treatment. Slade recounts how Waters would openly criticize Wright's playing during rehearsals, belittling his contributions in front of the entire crew. Waters seemed to take pleasure in making Wright feel small, even going so far as to call his work filler during the recording sessions for Animals. For Wright, a musician who had once been an integral part of the band's unique sound, Waters' words cut deep. Slade recalls how Wright would quietly leave the studio after these remarks, retreating into himself, visibly hurt by the constant undermining. Slade emphasizes that this belittling behavior wasn't just a matter of Waters asserting his artistic vision. It was about establishing a hierarchy, a constant reminder to everyone around him that they were there to serve his vision. It wasn't enough for Roger to have control, Slade reflects. He needed to make sure everyone knew their place beneath him, and he did it by breaking them down, one comment at a time. Slade believes this created an emotional rift that never healed, eroding the very foundation of trust and respect that had once bound the band members together. According to Slade, the emotional wounds inflicted by Waters' dismissive attitude were as damaging as any contractual dispute or artistic difference. He recalls that the band's interactions began to feel more like power struggles than collaborations, with each member retreating further into their own world. Waters' insistence on dismissing the contributions of others didn't just stifle creativity, it poisoned the atmosphere, creating a sense of alienation that was palpable. Slade believes that this undercurrent of disrespect and condescension was a significant factor in the eventual unraveling of Pink Floyd's unity, leaving scars that lingered long after the band's heyday. For Slade, Waters' dismissive behavior was emblematic of a deeper issue, a sense of superiority that cast a shadow over the entire creative process. Roger didn't just want to lead the band, Slade notes. He wanted to own it, to make sure everyone else was just a player in his grand design. In Slade's view, this unchecked ego turned what could have been a harmonious collaboration into a battlefield, where respect was sacrificed in the name of ambition. The legacy of Pink Floyd, he suggests, will always be haunted by this dark undercurrent, a reminder of the fragility of even the most brilliant creative partnerships. Waters' behavior was perhaps most toxic on tour, where his temper and need for control reached new heights. Slade described the experience of touring with Waters as akin to walking on a minefield. One wrong look, one suggestion, and you'd be on his bad side for the rest of the tour, Slade recalled. Waters would insist on having things his way, from set lists to stage arrangements, and any deviation, even from technical staff, could spark his anger. His explosive reactions left everyone, band members, crew, and even fans, nervous and unsure of what might happen next. According to Slade, Waters' unpredictability created a tense and hostile environment, stripping the joy from performing and replacing it with dread. One of the most public and damaging aspects of Waters' influence was his ongoing rivalry with David Gilmour, a battle that only intensified as Pink Floyd's fame grew. Slade observed that Waters seemed to view Gilmour not as a partner but as competition, someone to be managed rather than embraced. This rivalry wasn't just a private tension, it was a public feud that led to divisive decisions, including Waters' eventual departure. Slade believes that Waters' refusal to compromise with Gilmour and the relentless undermining he engaged in contributed to the ultimate fracturing of Pink Floyd. For Waters, it seemed, sharing the spotlight was unthinkable, even if it meant jeopardizing the band's future. Chris Slade's portrayal of Roger Waters paints a picture of a man whose legacy is as much about alienation and ego as it is about musical genius. Slade contends that Waters' insistence on having the final say, coupled with his ruthless disregard for others' input, transformed Pink Floyd from a collaborative ensemble into a one-man show. The cost, Slade suggests, was not just personal but artistic. Pink Floyd's creative potential was hindered by Waters' inability to accept that his vision was not the only path forward. While Waters' genius is undeniable, Slade's accounts reveal a darker side of his influence, one that ultimately led to broken relationships and a fractured band. The tension between Waters and Gilmour is well documented. Their differing artistic visions led to a power struggle that affected the band's cohesion. Slade observed that Waters' desire for control often clashed with Gilmour's approach to music, creating an environment fraught with rivalry. This discord was not just a personal matter but had professional repercussions, influencing the band's creative process and output. Having worked closely with Gilmour, Slade holds the guitarist in high regard. He has expressed that Pink Floyd's enduring legacy owes much to Gilmour's musical genius. Slade believes that without Gilmour's contributions, the band would not have achieved the same level of success. He credits Gilmour's distinctive guitar work and compositional skills as integral to the band's identity. Slade's insights shed light on the complexities within Pink Floyd. He suggests that Waters' dominant personality and lack of appreciation for his bandmates' talents led to internal strife. This environment made collaboration challenging and ultimately contributed to the band's fragmentation. Slade's reflections highlight the delicate balance required in creative partnerships and the impact of individual dynamics on collective success. Chris Slade's experiences within Pink Floyd's inner circle reveal a multi-layered picture of the band's dynamics, painting Roger Waters as both visionary and villain. His insights offer a lens into the challenges and complexities that arise when collaboration is eclipsed by one person's overwhelming desire for control. Slade's reflections highlight not only the toll that Waters' authoritarian style took on the band's unity, but also how the underappreciation of David Gilmour's contributions undermined the essence of what made Pink Floyd timeless. Slade's respect for Gilmour reminds us that no single vision could have created the iconic sound that Pink Floyd is known for. Gilmour was not merely a guitarist but the soul of the band, a balancing force to Waters' intensity. Without Gilmour's input, Slade argues, Pink Floyd would have been a cold, distant entity, a sound without warmth, a voice without melody. This respect for each member's role serves as a reminder of the importance of valuing all contributions in a collective artistic endeavor. Slade also emphasizes the tragic irony that, while Waters may have propelled the band to greatness, he simultaneously fractured the relationships that were essential to its very foundation. This tragedy of genius, a figure so focused on his own ambition that he neglected to acknowledge the talents around him, echoes in the legacy of Pink Floyd, a legacy that Slade believes could have been even more profound had Waters recognized the power of unity over dominance.